is a hideous example of how the Western media, including the BBC, helps facilitate Israel's genocide of the Palestinian people in Gaza. Now, the Israeli state is repeatedly massacring starving Palestinians who are desperately trying to get aid for them and their families. That's what's currently happening at the moment. The Western media's refusal to spell out those facts and its collaboration with Israel's propaganda has enabled these atrocities to happen again and again and again. Now, as a little recap here, Israel instituted a total blockade on anything and everything from getting into Gaza on the 2nd of March. The consequence of this is that 100% of Gaza's population is now at risk of famine, according to the United Nations. Israel then set up something called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, a shadowy US-Israeli front whose funders are hidden, which all aid agencies who actually have experience of distributing aid at scale condemned as violating the very basics of humanitarianism, for example, independence. Indeed, the US Marine appointed to head the foundation himself resigned, stating it violated the necessary principles of humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence. Indeed, Israel's finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, has publicly declared this is a ruse so Israel can deflect claims of deliberate starvation and, to use his words, prevent the world from stopping us. And by stopping us, of course, he means completing the genocide. In practice, this so-called foundation is just another stage in Israel's genocide. It has only set up a handful of sites in the south of Gaza in an attempt to force Gaza's population to all move to a confined space where they can be enclosed in a concentration camp, and then the survivors expelled. That is, those who survive. Very important point, because in practice, this will mean huge numbers of even more Palestinians being killed, with the survivors removed. Now, the aid being provided is much too little, and indeed is often not usable. For example, flour and dried pasta, when there isn't the means to cook them because Israel has blocked those means from entering Gaza. It is also all based on a lie that Hamas is stealing aid, the justification for the siege, when the likes of Cindy McCain, the widow of late staunchly pro-Israel Republican hawkish Senator John McCain, she's the head of the World Food Programme, amongst others, have said this is not happening, this isn't true, this whole rationale. Now, we know that the so-called Israel Defense Forces, the army responsible for executing the genocide of the Palestinian people, is in charge of this system, because they just went out and said it. This is the IDF spokesperson, Effie Defrin.
I'm here in the city of Rafah. Right behind me, you can see one of the distribution centers we opened in the last few days. So far, we opened 4 distribution centers.
Very clearly, he's stating that we, that is the IDF, are in charge of these centres. Now, allowing small amounts of aid to enter a territory with a starving population is just asking for looting. Not least because of criminal gangs who are operating under the nose of the Israeli state, who all the evidence shows are cooperating with the Israeli army, and because the Israeli state keeps murdering local security personnel whose job includes guarding aid, allowing safe passage. On the 27th of May, the Israeli army opened fire at Palestinians queuing for food in these circumstances. In that case, they actually, the security, the army and the US mercenaries had to flee. I mean, the whole system is a joke, not a funny joke. In any case, the aid points in practice mean cramming Palestinians into fenced camps, manned by Israeli soldiers and thuggish American mercenaries, with images of those reminiscent of the hideous horrors of our past. Crucially, the Israeli army keeps massacring Palestinians at these aid points. Much of the Western media simply fail to spell out the inarguable facts that the Israeli state is massacring these starving Palestinians. On the 1st of June, dozens of Palestinians were slaughtered and hundreds more injured as they waited for food at the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation distribution centres in Rafah. We have footage from Palestinians there of being shot at by Israeli machine guns.
Ya Allah. Ya Allah. انفتح. Ya Allah.
We have this testimony from, for example, Dr. Victoria Rose. We have lots of testimonies of doctors. She's a British surgeon at the only remaining functioning hospital in the south of Gaza.
I'm in the emergency Emergency department at the NASA complex. We've had a shooting at the GHF aid distribution centre near Rafah. A lot of the injured people were taken to the local field hospitals, we think to ICRC, but we have had an extortionate amount of people come through the door. At the moment, the locals are quoting anything from 200 to possibly 100 injured people. These are all gunshot wounds, and as you can see behind me, we've got all the bays are full and they're all gunshot wounds. It's absolute carnage here, and there are even more people in the main emergency department.
The NGO Médecins Sans Frontières published testimonies from survivors. According to Mansour Sami Abdi, a father of four, people fought over 5 pallets. They told us to take food, then they fired from every direction. I ran 200 meters before realizing I'd been shot. This isn't aid, it's a lie. Are we supposed to go get food for our kids and die? They also published the testimony of Mohammed Dagme, a Palestinian man displaced in Al-Karara, Khan Yunis. He says, I was shot at 3:10 a.m. As we were trapped, I bled constantly till 5 a.m. There were many other men with me. One of them tried to get me out. He was shot in the head and died on my chest. We'd gone there for nothing but food, just to survive, like everyone else. According to the Red Cross, they received the highest number of weapon-wounded people in a single incident since the hospital was set up a year ago in Gaza. The Israeli army then resorted to their usual tricks when they commit atrocities, a combination of lies, deflections, gaslighting, muddying the waters. They issued a statement declaring all aid was distributed today without incident. No injuries or fatalities, as noted in our daily update sent out earlier. We have heard that these fake reports have been actively fermented by Hamas. They are untrue and fabricated. The Israeli authorities then issued footage which they say showed Hamas shooting at civilians, in the words of an Israeli Minister of Foreign Affairs spokesperson, to prevent them from reaching aid distribution points. So the claim there is they're spinning this claim that Israel is trying to help the Palestinian people. They're trying to stop them from being starved to death. They're not the problem. They're not the reason why there's famine. But Hamas are preventing the Palestinians from getting the aid that Israel is so generously providing. That's the whole narrative that they're weaving. Now, this was false, completely false. It's a lie. This wasn't Rafah, this footage where the massacre took place. It was Khan Yunis. And as the Palestinian analyst Mohammed Shahada put it, an Israeli-backed gang looted 7 trucks of flour and sold it to starved people for $30 per bag. Anyone that tried to take a bag without paying was shot at or beaten up, all under the surveillance of Israeli drones that did nothing. Israel then changed their story. An IDF official said that Israeli soldiers fired warning shots towards several suspects who advanced towards the troops, without saying who the suspects were. The modus operandi of the Israeli state is completely transparent. They carry out these massacres and sow chaos, knowing a supine Western media will lap it all up and fail to do their job, working out what's true and what's not. And then, when it's too late and the attention moves elsewhere, the atrocity they've perpetrated ends up being filed in a box labelled the fog of war, where everyone's just encouraged to conclude, well, we don't know what's really happened, what's really going on, it's all too chaotic, and there's so many different claims being fired around, I don't know what to believe. That's what they're trying to do. Despite all the overwhelming evidence of what's actually happened, despite the overwhelming evidence of Israel lying over and over and over again, mainstream Western media organizations collaborate with Israel's propaganda strategy. Take the BBC. Their report on the massacre on the 1st of June is headlined, Red Cross says at least 21 killed and dozens shot in Gaza aid incident. Firstly, that's a drastic underestimate, but note how the headline strips away Israeli responsibility. It doesn't say who's done the firing. And I'm afraid the data shows overwhelmingly people don't read past the headline. Aid incident as well. We're talking about a massacre. Incident. If, for example, 21 British civilians were just massacred, mowed down, would they call that an incident? Let's just be serious here. Let me read what the article says. A mass casualty influx, that's in quotes, of people, many with gunshot or shrapnel wounds, was received at a Red Cross field hospital in southern Gaza, the organisation said, following disputed reports about an incident near an aid distribution centre in Rafah. The International Committee of the Red Cross said 21 people were declared dead upon arrival, while women and children were among 179 cases. The organisation's statement came after the Hamas-run civil defence agency in Gaza said at least 31 people were killed and many more wounded in the incident, which it blamed on Israeli gunfire targeting civilians. But the Israel Defense Forces said findings from initial inquiry showed its forces had not fired at people while they were near or within the aid center. The IDF also released drone footage, it said, showed armed and masked men throwing stones and shooting at civilians while they collected aid in the nearby city of Khan Yunis. The BBC could not immediately verify the footage. Where to begin here? Note that the BBC refuses to present the obvious fact that Israel is responsible. They use this word disputed. That's what they use. This is the muddying water thing. Disputed. He says, she says. Who's to know who's right? Who's to know what the truth is? Note instead how they refer to Israeli guilt via Hamas, a Hamas statement. They know that undermines faith in the claim. It becomes, well, Hamas claims one thing. Do you really believe Hamas? That's what that's all about. No, they then just present the Israeli denials of responsibility after that as credible. That's what they do. They present it as a credible claim. It's back to that quote, isn't it? Again, I keep using this quote. If someone says it's raining outside and someone says it's not raining, your job is to look out the fucking window. Not to say one claims this, one claims that. But that's what they're doing here. Note how they also include, the BBC, reference to footage, which is irrelevant. It's completely irrelevant. It's criminal gangs shooting at Palestinians elsewhere. It has nothing to do with this, which they know will encourage readers to believe, for example, that, well, Hamas could really be responsible for the massacre. Instead, it's all fog of war. It's all, well, there's lots of shooting going on around. Who knows what's going on? The BBC does all of this despite the video evidence, despite the witness testimonies, despite the testimonies of doctors, despite overwhelming evidence of Israel relentlessly lying about its atrocities, despite so many other previous comparable massacres. I'll come on to that. And despite, crucially, that this is happening in a closed Israeli military zone. This is within their hub, their manning. The BBC is suggesting it's somehow plausible that Hamas could be freely operating within a hub manned by Israeli soldiers. That is insane. It's completely insane. Let's come on now to Sky News. Their headline, IDF issues denial after reports of at least 31 people killed in Israeli attack near aid distribution site. Note how they foreground the denial. Do they just print any old denial and treat that as credible? When you get this sort of massacre, Vladimir Putin, North Korea, Assad when he was in power? No, they don't. Now, at length, it gives space to Israeli denials, including the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs saying the attack could be Hamas propaganda. Just nonsense. The evidence shows the attack has happened. We know that this is happening, and we know that it's not possible for anyone else to be responsible. They quote the foundation, which is an Israeli front, so they're now just treating it as, here's this independent foundation. It's not, it's just the IDF. They quote its statement saying, all aid was distributed today without incident. No injuries or fatalities as noted in our daily update sent out earlier. We've heard these fake reports have been actively fomented by Hamas. They are untrue and fabricated. What, are the BBC going to start printing, a new statement's come out saying the Earth's flat. Just going to just uncritically print the Earth is flat. This is where we're at here. That's obviously not true. It's not the job of journalists to just print immediately, obviously provably wrong statements. These are all lies. And Sky News should not be amplifying these lies and treating them as credible. For context, on the 29th of February 2024, Israeli forces massacred over 100 Palestinians waiting for food in the so-called Flower Massacre. The Israeli state played all the same tunes that they've played here. All the same games. Then about 6 weeks later, CNN did a detailed rebuttal of all the Israeli lies about the massacre. But before you give CNN credit, it was too late. It did not have anywhere near the prominence of the original Israeli claims, the lies, and attention had moved on. This is the strategy deployed over and over again. For example, when the Israeli military massacred 16 Palestinian paramedics and first responders earlier this year and buried them in a mass grave, which they lied through their teeth about, even when footage of what actually happened was released. And the media, including the BBC, again, went along with these Israeli ruses. This has happened over and over and over again. And eventually you get, as I've said, some cases where they go, well, they deconstruct the lies, but it's then completely divorced from the wider reporting. It's siloed, it's orphaned. So it's like Groundhog Day. It's just, they don't then treat subsequent Israeli claims as obviously completely implausible. They don't know the history of statements by Israel which are wrong. These are the same people who weave in as standard Hamas-run health ministry in order to sow doubt in the official death statistics, which we know actually, according to all the research, independent research, are drastic underestimates of the death toll. They don't put in a standard previous Israeli statements have been found to be false, including, for example, about relevant massacres of people trying to get aid. Now, once again today, the Israelis have done another massacre at a so-called aid site, killing dozens of Palestinians. And we can hear from one of the surviving Palestinian journalists, Hind Kandri, who is a brilliant journalist, about what happened, doing the job the BBC and other organisations have failed to do.
Well, the same exact thing that happened the past 4 days. Palestinians were waiting and approaching towards this distribution point to collect food. And what we need to know is the death toll rose to 27, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health. And we're talking about at least 90 Palestinians injured. Now, all of these people were walking towards the distribution point collecting food. Now, we heard from eyewitnesses that there are some people that were able to collect a little bit of food. What we also knew from the eyewitnesses is it's more of a chaos. There's no process, there's no system. You just need to run first and to grab food to be able to get the food. And this is why this is making a lot of chaos. The Israeli forces just opens fire automatically, randomly, shooting Palestinians in their upper parts of their bodies, using quadcopters and live ammunition. And Palestinians are very desperate to get food. That is why they're going there.
According to a doctor at Nasser Hospital, most of the victims are children, aged between 10 and 13, many with gunshot wounds to the head and chest. The idea that Israeli snipers do not know they're shooting little children in the head and chest is a fantasy. One of the most advanced militaries on earth, is we're constantly told, they're just accidentally shooting Israeli gunmen, they're just accidentally shooting children in the head and chest. That's interesting, isn't it? How they manage to specifically end up shooting them in the head and chest. Not on the arm, not on the legs, not elsewhere in the torso. Head and chest. That's what a sniper is deliberately doing to kill people. And they can see who they're shooting. And we know this because, again, dozens of US-based medics who served in Gaza reported, as even the New York Times was forced to print, that they were dealing overwhelmingly with children who'd been sniper shot in the head and the chest, often repeatedly. The Israeli state knows it can keep massacring Palestinians because the BBC and other media outlets will collaborate with them in practice to deflect responsibility. Now listen to how the BBC has covered the latest massacre.
Hello, welcome. I'm Martine Croxall. Reports are emerging of another fatal incident near a distribution centre in Hamas-controlled Gaza. This is the live scene over the Gaza Strip, where we've seen huge plumes of smoke rising in the past couple of hours. A spokesman for the Hamas-run Civil Defence Agency says Israeli troops killed 24 people, including a woman about a kilometre away from the site in the southern part of the Strip.
The state of this. A massacre was a fatal incident. Gaza has now become Hamas-controlled Gaza. And Israeli responsibilities are only attributed to a claim by Hamas, immediately sowing doubt in the claim. And this use of Hamas-controlled Gaza, this is interesting, not in a good way. It's not a one-off. The BBC seems to have suddenly introduced Hamas-controlled Gaza into their reporting lexicon. It also features in an online report today from the BBC journalist Barbara Plett-Usher in a report which, again, does not establish Israeli blame and includes past Israeli denials as credible. Hamas-controlled Gaza. It's got all sorts of implications, not least deflecting from the reality that Israel is the occupier with all the legal responsibilities that come with that. For example, ensuring access to humanitarian aid. Now, today, the BBC finally assigns blame to Israel in their headline, but this is too little too late. There's an example, horrible example, of how the Western media collaborates with the Israeli propaganda campaign. Israel's genocide would not be possible without Western states arming and supporting it. If the Western media actually did their job, it would be politically impossible for Western governments to continue facilitating genocide. Mainstream media organizations are complicit in genocide. History will record that, and we will continue in the here and now to hold them to account for what they've done. Please like and subscribe, leave your thoughts in your comments, help us take on the pro-genocide media at patreon.com/OwnDesert4. You make all of this possible. This is how we do our jobs. We're reaching millions of people across every different platform. That's thanks to you. We'll continue to do so. do share the video. Listen to us on the podcast if you prefer. I'll speak to you soon.